All right, so our task was to work with the food charter, which was developed in 2016. And there's been a lot of hard work that's gone into this food charter. This is from the food charter website, this image here. And we have these 5 principles. And basically, the need that was identified in our problem statement here for our task was that we needed to develop an impact and engagement strategy for the charter. The charter has not been extremely effective, or we haven't had the amount of engagement that we'd like to up to this point. So our task was to kind of go in there and provide an outside perspective on some strategies for how to make that engagement and that effectiveness of the charter increase. So what we did was we looked at kind of an overarching strategy for an overarching strategy rather than real specific things. So basically what we said is we have this tree now of the charter, and we wanted to nurture that more. So rather than just having this tree repoliticize the policy of the city, we wanted to plant the seeds and kind of nurture that a little more. So we carried this metaphor throughout here. So we have this tree, and what we said is this tree needs to be rooted in both idealism and pragmatism. So right now, maybe the tree is a little bit more over here in the idealistic part, and we needed to kind of bring some action into that. So we need to kind of pick people up where they're at, engage with that politics that's already happening, and repoliticize the politics through this tension of idealism and pragmatism. So kind of navigating that, and instead of having this tree as just this fixed, stable point, we need to have this tension working with also the bees, the more flexible actors within the city that are kind of cross-pollinating these ideas. So we're carrying this metaphor forward here, and hopefully that becomes more clear as we go on. So now, in our limited time, we did a little bit of empirical work, and now Natalie's just gonna introduce that and show how we came up with some of our ideas.
Yeah, so in order to know where are people at now, we went on the street to talk to students and people in faculty, which brought us with some open questions, and in order to understand what and how do they think about food, and how do they understand food with related issues. For example, we asked, do you know where did your breakfast come from? What factors would you consider when buying food? And have you ever considered growing your own food? And we have summarized our conversation in a short video clip.
Many group championship problems. It's never been any different. It's been very badly off for cafes. This is one of the better ones. It has practicality. It's a very good system.
I didn't eat breakfast, but the last food I ate was from Sainsbury's, like those snacks.
Domestic science, which is very refreshing children nowadays, cooking is not so much in school. So young people really don't get much opportunity to learn about healthy eating and healthy food preparation. And so they're more likely to go to fast food takeaways or buy junk food, which is heavily created by the supermarkets.
I think we focus on the individual, not the time they can seek out, not about the project itself,
Producers of food, supermarkets.
I think overall it's a government job to sort of make sure and local councils, there are far too many fast food outlets, generally.
Me, exactly. Maybe just donate some money or, to some organizations.
Obviously, there's a situation for each individual, poverty is a tricky situation. Also, maybe food banks are a lot. I know a big network nowadays, so better provisions for them might be useful for some people who get access to certain food, so food spots.
Price and how healthy it is.
Like, if you could go to like a local market and buy all your food there, then ideal world you would, but most of the time it's too expensive. And convenience, having everything in one place is easy to go. Effectively avoids that.
We've got a lovely market there, you can buy all sorts of fresh fruit and vegetables. And I don't see many, I go in the market, there's not very many young people who use that market, it's all older people who use the market. It's full of fresh. And you don't have to do very much harm with fresh fruit and vegetables. Fresh fruit and vegetables are fairly cheap.
Yeah, so from the video, we can see some contradictions in what people are saying and doing. For example, the young guy said he thinks it's individual responsibility to help with food poverty, but when he go to supermarket and buy food, what he consider the most is the price and convenience. And while the old guy said they think that the fresh food is too expensive and not convenient, but the old man said, well, young people don't like to go to the Coventry market, and the food there is actually fairly cheap and fresh. And so we can see that young people are not aware of the problems, and they also do not think that they can play a role in helping the food-related issues in Coventry. And we also had the chance to talk with the sustainability manager of Coventry University, which is Selina, and he shared with us that she shared with us that she had some efforts in promoting food sharing culture in Coventry University. For example, she set up a community fridge, but the participation of the students is not very active. So we believe that we should pick people up at where they are at. So we propose to turn the food charter into something approachable, tangible, and relatable to people. So now Sarah will share some horizontal strategies we propose.
So yes, how to nurture this food charter tree. We believe that there's actually two approaches of doing that. One is horizontal, so it's about, and yeah, the other is vertical. I'll talk about the horizontal first. The horizontal is really about getting this conversation going. So we were talking about, it's actually campaigning for the campaign, because if you don't think about food that often, or yeah, if you don't consider these food issues, then if you see this food charter, it's kind of overwhelming maybe. Maybe you should first ask some of these open questions, just like as we've seen in the video, to really start thinking about it. And yeah, where do you get these types of conversations going? We've identified three strategies, like it's actually best practices of what we've experienced in our own cities. First of all, we would really recommend Coventry to create some maps. In Groningen have, for example, a city map that identifies all the sustainable places to eat, to drink, and to shop. And it's actually really useful if you want to explore a city. So in Coventry, you could, for example, think of identifying all the charities, identifying places to eat, and also these initiatives that are going on, because a lot is going on already. We've seen that this week. And in a way, it's to also give an incentive for these organizations to be involved with the food charter. And on the other end, it's also for the individuals just to explore the city. Then another way to get conversation going is social media. If you get some of these questions or personal stories about food on, for example, Twitter, it will give people it will create some more awareness about these issues, and it's also a way of the organizations that are involved in the food charter to share their success stories and to create this stage of presenting your own solutions. And then, well, food is about gathering, feasting, coming together. So we also believe that creating an event is also a way to get this conversation going. So a way to, and then after these types of things, well, if all of these strategies are really covered under this one umbrella of the food charter, it will definitely create more awareness about the food charter and will incentivize people to become involved. So give the floor to Maya.
Hi, I'm going to talk about the second strategy that we came up with, which is the vertical strategy. And this strategy is targeting institutions. And we suggest in this strategy is to offer to the institutions a tailored proposal, which fits in what they are doing at the moment, and also show them how to make the principles of the food charter more concrete and practical. And through this, we can translate these principles into practice. And also, this can be achieved by identifying what they are doing at this right moment and show them what they are doing is also part of the food charter. For example, if we take like Coventry University, and after our interview with the sustainable manager there, we found that the university is already doing some initiatives, as Natalie said, about the community fresh, and the university is already in discussion and negotiation with their food supplier to make the food supply at the campus more sustainable and trying to modify the contract. So we can talk with them from focusing on these points and tell them what you are trying to do is also fit and goes under the umbrella of the food charter. Another last thing that I would like to add here is to show these institutions that we are not only, they have a lot of resources that can be used, which is not only money, that they have the human capital. For example, in the case of the university, they have a lot of students, which are around 30,000. So these students could volunteer and help us in doing the campaigning for the campaign and be involved in other events. And now we have a budget for this project, which is around 10,000, and April will tell you how we will gonna use it.
All right, so we've talked about what are people up where they're at. We talked about all the strategies, and now we want to look at how do we make them meet. You know, how do we reach vertically, horizontally, and make people live that experience? Because food is about living, and that's the entire core idea of our presentation. So, what resources do we have? We've got like 10,000 pounds. Is that enough? We believe that is enough, because what we are trying to propose is that we're gonna kick it off, and we're gonna, or we propose to bring elements to make this coalition a self-sustaining entity. So as a, sorry, suddenly I got like this rush and get nervous. So we're saying that we want to make those maps to give people a mental image, where to go, where to see this happening on the ground, right? And the exciting thing about kickoff event is that, as we see before, like this street festival, not necessarily only about food, but about people working on food, about people wanting to support the food initiatives, about people who are working at universities, about getting the students a big pool of resources, this impulse of saying, wow, this is cool, this is happening, about getting people together and getting connected. And to do that, we need people on the ground, volunteers and a dedicated team from this tiny budget and these little bees flying around, knowing where to find people to talk. And then, build on that, we believe that there's opportunity for sustaining and growing, because then it's really organic on the ground. So basically that's what we propose, to build on this financial resource and what we already have in the community to lead it into the future. So we're going to conclude with
All right, so
Briefly.
we still have a few minutes, I guess?
go 1 minute.
Oh, 1 minute, okay, so really quickly, I don't know how many people are familiar with forest ecology, but basically, to have a healthy forest ecosystem, you have several different layers of the forest. So we see this emergent layer here as the food charter. That's what we have right now, that's what we focused on. And we need to focus more on this underbody layer in developing a bottom-up strategy. And that may start as a small seed, may start as a small plant, but through the work of our worker bees And through the work of a little bit of pragmatism, we can start to repoliticize the food policy in the city, not only through this big tree by itself, but also through some of these sustained efforts. And that's, the message we wanted to leave you with. So hopefully that metaphor came through there of how to repoliticize through planting seeds.
So it was great to meet you earlier in the week and see how your ideas have developed. So you've obviously put a lot of work in since we met as well. And I thought a really important point on this idea of idealism and pragmatism, and that was something that we definitely discussed on Tuesday, that if you are a business or a member of the community, how do you interact with the food charter? How does it become something that's meaningful to you? So really great to see that sort of visualised in what you presented. I haven't really got many questions because I think we chatted a lot on Tuesday, but I thought the production of the map, when you were talking about the map, I could see how that could evolve from being maybe a static map to almost those organisations being partners in the food charter and almost having a sort of treasure trail of cafes, businesses who could be part of events, so themed weeks or other things that they could very much lead on or be part of. So I think that was really, really interesting. And something also occurred to me when we were talking about the targeting institutions as well. From the work that Michael, myself and Moya and Chiara have done around looking at our contracts at Coventry University, we've obviously done a lot of thinking about wording and how we encourage our supply chain to be more sustainable in our food production, and we've certainly shared that in the sector. We have a lot of conversations with other institutions, universities, but perhaps what we haven't done is got together with other industries locally to share that knowledge and our learning from that, and to see what other people are doing with different suppliers. So I thought there's definitely some gaps there that could be explored as well. So thank you, really, really interesting, thank you.
That's part of the reason we were thinking about getting this really kick-off event that brings different actors just on the street, like really close to life, but institutions as well. And you kind of get into the same space, and then you could just pick up the conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I really like the idealism versus pragmatism things. I think that's something that we need to develop and work on as we move forward with the food charter. You've talked a lot about engaging with the university and focused an awful lot on students, which is great. I mean, we've got a massive student population in the city. We've got a population of about 340,000 people in the city. So have you given any thought as to how you get out to the residents, people that I represent, for example, as a city councillor, and how we make this a live thing for them? Some of them are potentially quite well off, quite wealthy, can afford to go and do their shopping wherever they want. Some of them haven't got 2 pennies to rub together. So have you given any thought as to how we can engage local residents as well as sort of the big organisations?
Yeah, I think with that budget, what we're looking to do is really give that to already existing organizations. So something we had talked about also with Selena is if there's already charities that are existing, giving them a couple £100 is going to go a lot further, so they can kind of develop events, and those events and these outreach strategies are really designed to get as many people talking about these problems, talking about these issues as possible. So yeah, I don't think it was focused necessarily on students. Students we see as a resource for labor. So
that's pretty controversial. I'm gonna drag that stage. No, I think
yeah, students have projects, and they can. It's a resource we have to use, and that's the pragmatic element coming through. But yeah, we see that as more of a resource for labor, and we're using them to, or working with them to get this message out to the community, because that requires a lot of groundwork. So
we also thought that students, from interviews we had, also the clip we show, we figured that people are at different places. The thing is that even though around this table we all think that food poverty is a central issue in Coventry right now, but our impression from the street is that actually a lot of people don't necessarily think of food poverty as having limited access to healthy food. Some of them think that food poverty is food illiteracy, which is part of it. So that's what we realized about this pragmatism is that first we need to get people to start to talk about this, to make it part of conversation in the university, on the street. And when people start to think about it, and then we might get a better chance for them to engage. Like if we take it too big a leap, we start to get losing people. I think that's what we're aiming at bringing up and highlighting.
Any more comments or questions from the panel?
Yeah, I can go if it's okay. The live presentation, there were certain bits of it I got a little bit lost with the clarity, but the food mapping was a good idea. This slide is my favourite slide actually. It really sort of brought it together, it made it quite clear to me, and it's quite interesting the way you said it, and the use of the bees is very clever, I think, because and this is how visually people will understand and see the changes you want to make. It's easier to use it that way. You showed a video. The sound, you have to be very careful in my mind to use a video in the presentation as to how much of your time you take for that and what message it gives, because it was a bit mumbled, but some of the messages are coming out there, and you made a statement after that you got this feedback from the older generation, you got this feedback from the younger generation, and it was very, very opposite, so they were total opposite to what they were talking about. How do you think the younger generation compared to the older generation can contribute to making this happen? Which is the strongest of those two forces?
Yeah, well, I think we didn't necessarily have enough time to go and get a big enough sample in order to make a clear statement about that. But what we can say is we just see that they have different opinions about it. And I wouldn't say either is stronger, they're both crucial parts of it. Yeah, it's really just about inviting everyone together to have that conversation. And what we wanted to show with the videos is that's part of the strategy, is to get out there and do these conversations. And like Natalie mentioned, we see how those contradictions emerge as you have the conversation. You see one assumption and a belief about food poverty being an individual problem, and the one in the kids on the bikes. And then at the end, he says, well, if that food at the local market was affordable, in an ideal world, you'd be able to buy all your food there. So you kind of see these contradictions emerging, and just through having those conversations. And I don't think it's necessarily a priority to target one of those groups more, that either group is stronger. I think, like you said, we have to pick up the people where they're at and bring them to us. And there's all these different layers in this model here, so it's all kind of part of it. Yeah.
And then we also thought that, it's about togetherness. It's not a particular group. Young people, we have a lot to learn from the older generation, because they know, they're not actually a couple, but the grandpa and grandma, they're very lovely. They were telling me that where they go to get fresh food, actually affordable.
Yeah.
And what they think about how much time they spend in the supermarket just reading about the ingredients. Of course, they also have time, but they realize that. So when we come together, this coming together is like, we cannot say you should come together. I think that's the core point what's happening right here, is like get people wanting to do this. And so when young people have the energy, when they get motivated, like I think from civilian we know that recycling was overnight suddenly started being trendy. That's because you got this social campaign, you got this Facebook event or street event, and suddenly it's cool. And now you get this, this food topic to become cool for young people. And you have old people engaged in this conversation, and they bring people together. And this togetherness is what we need to build this horizontal base, that when the university, the city council, reaching down from the vertical, and you get those kind of merging together, and then boom, I think that's gonna do the magic. Yeah, of the food culture, food identity.
Any more comments or questions from the panel? We do have 5 more minutes.
Could I ask one other question? With rainforest layers again, and I sort of get a picture of that. Where's our weakest link? Where we are today now, in the current situation, Coventry, feeding Coventry, where's our weakest link, do you believe?
I think I would say the umbrella is still missing, because there's a lot of things happening, but they're not connected. And
Not
if they could share their experience and their knowledge with each other, if the food charter could also become some sort of group that meets 2 times a year or something, that will provide a stage and also an extra incentive to act upon the food charter.
And
So something to take ownership of it, effectively.
Yeah.
And I think another link that is closely related are those fees. We launched the food charter, a lot of work went in, and what we identified is a lack of engagement and lack of follow-up because of resources. Everybody has limited resources. So where do we get this cross-pollination? And those fees, and just local actors, because we got signatories, some small charity organizations, but not necessarily a conversation ongoing. And I think if we want that, we really need those really organisms that, even though tiny, and also with limited resources, you could already activate and mobilize them. And unfortunately, we didn't have enough time, but we were thinking that next step forward might be just to identify those small actors to form that bridge and all cross. I was thinking that today I was going to dance this out. Yeah, but basically that's what we're saying, that the next step forward is really sort of connect with real.
And the food charter needs to sell itself more. It needs to present food as a solution to every problem the city has or that different groups have. And that's how you generate that umbrella. You approach people and you convince them that their mission is also about food. There's a solution in their problem that is has food at the basis. So it's really about selling it and about you have the tree as the food charter in the central, and you need to, like you said, bring people to that and develop that underbody. So.
Could you see the City of Culture being a mechanism in terms of raising some awareness or having an uprising of activity?
I think there was a central term that we didn't bring out explicitly today, is that the culture of food identity, right? That's what we talked about. Yeah, it's all part of the culture, the city culture, like how people share about food, how people go about celebrating food, how people go about living through having food together, noticing that some might have more, some might not even have access to any. And this is basically, and all those small social enterprises, like how they produce their food and what messages they want to send out, what kind of eating culture they want to promote. The old gentleman saying that young people don't even know what food is all about. I guess that's really, to use a personal example, I'm Chinese. I only started hang out with someone who knows the Chinese eating, that this sense of connection came right away because you have a shared sense of what food is all about. So, and it's really one of the very core part of culture, I think, and that could just play very nicely into this city of culture thing. Anything you guys want to add?
Good. Looks like there is just 1 minute left. Maybe there is some homework for feeding Coventry to think about. Working as an umbrella or as a wind to move the pollens around, and or should we work as both or more? Build, thicken the layers. Thank you very much. I think we've finished the time. Thank you guys.